the south of Asia, between the Himalayas in the north and the Indian Ocean in the south, lies a land that challenges the imagination. India, a subcontinent almost as large as Europe, with a population that has long surpassed Europe's entirely. 14 major languages, hundreds of dialects, 6 great religions, thousands of castes, thousands of gods. And yet, for 3,000 years, one civilization that knows itself, that understands who it is. India gave the world the number 0, without which there is no mathematics, no computing, no physics. Chess, Buddhism, yoga, cotton, pepper, and cinnamon. The spices that drove Europe to send its ships into the ocean and discover America. Tonight we follow the history of this land, from the first cities on the Indus to the modern India that challenges the world in the 21st century. Slowly, quietly, from the very beginning. Close your eyes if you wish. India is waiting. We continue our story. 3,000 years before the Common Era, in the northwest of modern India and in modern Pakistan, something emerges that the world has not yet seen. A city, not a village, not a camp. A city with streets that cross at right angles, with houses of fired brick, with a drainage system that millennia later does not exist in Europe. Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, the great cities of the Indus Valley Civilization, each with perhaps 40,000 inhabitants, clean, ordered, carefully planned. They have a script that we cannot yet read. None of the attempts to decipher it have succeeded. What they thought, what they believed, what stories they told, we do not know. They traded with Mesopotamia, with the modern Oman, with Central Asia. Their seals are found in the ruins of Ur, in the graves of the Sumerians. And then, around 1900, before the Common Era, they disappear. The cities are abandoned, the script vanishes, the trade collapses. Climate change, drought, a river that changes its course. We are not certain, but their legacy lives in the city plans, in the trade routes, in the ideas that sank deep into the soil of India. In our next chapter, new peoples arrive with new ideas and sacred texts. Rest now. The story continues. We continue our story. Around 1500 before the Common Era, new peoples arrive in India, from the north, from Central Asia. The Aryans, with horses and chariots, with a language that becomes the mother of Sanskrit and the grandmother of Greek, Latin, German. They bring their texts, the Vedas, the oldest sacred literature in the world that is still alive today. Veda means knowledge, 4 great collections of hymns, of rituals, of cosmology, of philosophy. From these texts there grows slowly the most complex religion in the world, Hinduism. It has no founder, no single holy book, no prophet. It has grown over 3,000 years from countless sources. 33 million gods, so says the tradition. But this is a misunderstanding. 33 million aspects of the one, of Brahman, the infinite reality that lies behind everything. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, the creator, the preserver, the destroyer. 3 aspects of the same cycle of life, of death, of rebirth. Samsara, the cycle of rebirths, karma. What you sow, you reap, in this life and in the next. Moksha, liberation from the cycle, the ultimate goal of the Hindu life. In our next chapter, a prince finds another path. Rest now, the story continues. We continue our story. 563 before the Common Era, in the northeast of India, in what is now Nepal, a prince is born. Siddhartha Gautama, son of a king, raised in a palace, surrounded by beauty and wealth, by everything that makes life comfortable and pleasant. His father protects him from the world outside, from old age, from sickness, from death. But one day, Siddhartha leaves the palace and sees what his father had tried to hide from him. An old man, a sick man, a dead man, and a monk who seems to be at peace amid all the suffering. These 4 encounters change his life forever. He leaves the palace, his wife, his son, his wealth, and he searches. He lives as an ascetic, fasting to the bone, meditating for years. Then he sits under a fig tree in Bodh Gaya and vows not to rise until he finds the answer. And he finds it. He becomes the Buddha, the awakened one. Suffering has a cause, craving attachment, the self that believes itself more important than it is. The path out of suffering, the noble eightfold path, right view, right intention, right action, right speech, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. He teaches for 40 years. His teaching spreads from India to Ceylon, to China, to Japan, to Southeast Asia, to Tibet. Today, 500 million people follow his teaching. In our next chapter, the first great Indian empire arises. Rest now. The story continues. We continue our story. We continue our story. 3036 before the Common Era. Alexander the Great stands at the edge of India. He wants to go further, but his soldiers refuse. Alexander turns back and leaves behind him a political vacuum in the northwest of India. Into that vacuum steps a young man, Gupta Maurya. He founds the Maurya Empire, the first great empire to unite almost all of India, from the borders of Persia to the southern tip of the subcontinent. His grandson will bring the empire to its greatest extent and then change everything. Ashoka, king of the Maurya Empire, first a warrior, a brutal commander who subdues India with fire and sword. 258 before the Common Era, he fights the Battle of Kalinga, the bloodiest of his reign. 100,000 people die, 100,000 more are enslaved. Ashoka rides through the battlefield and sees what he has done. He breaks down. He turns to Buddhism. He renounces violence. He has pillars erected throughout his empire, with inscriptions about tolerance, about compassion, about the duty of a ruler to serve his people. He sends missionaries to Ceylon, to Greece, to Egypt, to spread the Buddha's teaching. Ashoka, perhaps the greatest ruler India has ever had, who turned from a murderer into something approaching a saint. In our next chapter, art and science flourish. Rest now. The story continues. We continue our story. After the fall of the Maurya Empire, India fragments into many small kingdoms. Centuries of division, centuries of change. Then in the 4th century of the Common Era, a new empire emerges. The Gupta Empire, which historians call India's Golden Age. Under the Gupta kings, science and art flourish, as rarely before, as rarely after. Aryabhata, a mathematician and astronomer, who in the 5th century calculates that the earth rotates on its own axis. 1,000 years before Copernicus, says the same thing. He calculates the value of pi with an accuracy Europe does not reach for centuries. And the zero, the greatest mathematical invention in history, emerges in India in this time. A number that represents nothing and yet changes everything without zero. There are no decimal numbers, no negative numbers, no algebra, no computing, no modern world. The Gupta age also brings classical Indian literature. Kalidasa, the Shakespeare of India, writes dramas and poems still performed on Indian stages today. In our next chapter, a new religion arrives in India. Rest now. The story continues. We continue our story. The 7th century of the Common Era. A new religion spreads outward from the Arabian Peninsula in all directions. Islam. 711. Arab warriors cross the Indus and occupy Sindh, the modern Pakistan. But Islam comes to India not only with the sword, also with trade, with merchants, with scholars, with Sufi mystics who sit in the villages and sing songs of the love of God. The Sufi saints, they speak the language of ordinary people. They tell of a God who loves, who forgives, who is not far away, but close in the heart. Millions of Indians convert to Islam, not always willingly, but often out of genuine conviction. Then come the Turks, Mahmud of Ghazni, who in the 11th century raids India 17 times, who plunders temples, who carries riches back to Central Asia. And then, in the 13th century, the Delhi Sultanate, the first great Islamic empire on Indian soil. Two worlds meet, Hinduism and Islam, sometimes in peace, sometimes in conflict, always in a conversation that continues to this day. In our next chapter, the greatest Islamic empire in India arises. Rest now. The story continues. We continue our story. 1526. A man from Central Asia, a descendant of Timur and Genghis Khan, crosses the mountains into northern India. Babur, the tiger, with a small army, but with something India has not yet seen: cannons. At Panipat, he defeats the Sultan of Delhi with artillery that sends the elephant army into panic. The Mughal Empire begins. Mughal, the Persian word for Mongol. Babur's grandson will bring the empire to its greatest glory and its most tolerant age. Akbar, the Great, 1556 to 1605, nearly 50 years of rule. Akbar is illiterate. He cannot read, but he is a genius of politics and of humanity. He marries Hindu princesses. He brings Hindu princes into his court. He abolishes the tax that non-Muslims had to pay, the jizya. He founds a discussion circle, the Ibadat Khana, the house of worship where Muslims and Hindus, Christians and Zoroastrians, Jains and Buddhists discuss together. He seeks a new religion, Dini Ilahi, the divine faith, a synthesis of everything that does not spread, but shows who he is. A ruler who believes that all paths lead to God. In our next chapter, the most beautiful building in the world is built. Rest now. The story continues. We continue our story. Agra, northern India. On the banks of the Yamuna River stands a building that silences language. The Taj Mahal. It is not a palace. It is not a temple. It is a tomb built by Shah Jahan, the fifth Mughal emperor, for his wife, Taj Mahal, who died in 1631, giving birth to their 14th child. Shah Jahan was inconsolable. He is said to have turned white overnight with grief. He decided to build a tomb that would show the world how much he loved her. 20,000 workers, 22 years, from 1632 to 1653. White marble from Rajasthan that gleams in the sun, glows in moonlight, shimmers pink at dawn, turns gold at dusk. Precious stones inlaid, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, jade from China, turquoise from Persia, onyx from Arabia. The proportions perfect, the reflection in the water in front of it doubles the beauty. A declaration of love in white marble that still stands 400 years later and still takes the breath away as Shah Jahan intended. In our next chapter, the Europeans arrive with different intentions. Rest now. The story continues. We continue our story. The 16th century, Europe wants spices. Pepper, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, that preserve food, that make life more bearable, that are worth a fortune. The route to India had long passed through Arab middlemen, expensive, complicated, uncertain. Then Vasco da Gama finds the sea route around Africa. In 1498, he lands in Calicut on the coast of India. Europe has found India directly. The Portuguese come first, then the Dutch, then the English. 1600, Queen Elizabeth I founds the East India Company, a trading company with the right to wage war, to make treaties, to govern territories. At first it is weak, begging, buying, at the edges of the great Mughal Empire. But the Mughal Empire weakens after Aurangzeb, the fanatical emperor who destroyed Akbar's tolerance. The empire fractures into conflict and weakness, and the company exploits every weakness, every conflict, every dispute, buys loyalties, builds armies from Indian soldiers, the sepoys paid and led by British officers. 1757, the Battle of Plassey, Robert Clive, with a small British force and many bribed Indian allies, defeats the Nawab of Bengal. Bengal, the richest province in India, falls into the hands of a trading company. In our next chapter, India fights back. Rest now. The story continues. We continue our story. The East India Company has brought almost all of India under its control. Bengal, Bombay, Madras, the Punjab, Oudh. But beneath the surface, something is building. The Indian soldiers, the sepoys, serve the company, fight for the company, die for the company. But they are paid less than their British counterparts, never promoted to senior rank, treated with contempt. Then comes the spark. 1857. The company introduces new cartridges, greased with animal fat to load them into their rifles. Soldiers must bite the cartridge with their mouths. Rumors spread. The grease comes from pigs, unclean for Muslims, and from cows, sacred for Hindus. Whether true or not, the spark is enough. In Meerut, a regiment shoots its British officers and marches to Delhi. The uprising spreads across northern India. Sepoys and civilians, princes and farmers, united in a moment of anger and desperation. The British suppress it with brutal force. Delhi is retaken. The last Mughal emperor is exiled. The uprising is crushed. But everything changes. The East India Company is dissolved. India passes directly to the British crown. The Raj begins. In our next chapter, Queen Victoria rules India. Rest now. The story continues. We continue our story. 1858. The British Crown takes direct rule over India. The Raj begins, the Hindi word for rule, British rule, over the Indian subcontinent that lasts 90 years until 1947. Queen Victoria is proclaimed Empress of India in 1876, a title she claims without ever visiting the country herself. The British build railways, the third largest railway network in the world, still today, built to move raw materials quickly to the ports, but also connecting a vast country. Telegraph lines, universities, courts, a unified administration. But at what price? The Indian textile industry is destroyed so that Manchester can sell its cloth to India. Indian raw materials flow to England. Industrial goods come back more expensive. Famines. Between 1876 and 1879, between 6 and 10 million people die, while India exports grain to England. And the humiliation, daily, subtle and open, trains with separate compartments, clubs with signs reading, "No dogs or Indians admitted." In our next chapter, a man rises who fights differently. Rest now. The story continues. We continue our story. A small man with round glasses, in a simple white cloth, with a walking staff and an idea that will change the world. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. He is not a warrior. He is a lawyer from Gujarat who spent 20 years in South Africa, where he experienced firsthand what racism means, thrown from a train because he sat in first class. He returns to India in 1915 and begins to fight, but not with weapons. Satyagraha, holding on to truth, non-violent resistance, ahimsa, non-harming. The idea is simple, but revolutionary. If a system is unjust, refuse to cooperate with it, without violence, with dignity, until it collapses. 1930, the Salt March, the British tax salt, even the seawater on the shore, no one may take without paying. Gandhi marches 400 kilometers in 24 days, with more and more people joining him along the way. He kneels at the sea, picks up a handful of salt and breaks the law. The world watches and understands that something has begun that cannot be stopped. In our next chapter, the movement grows larger. Rest now, the story continues. We continue our story. Gandhi is not alone. Around him, a movement grows. The Indian National Congress, founded in 1885, initially by educated Indians who wanted more say. Not independence, just a voice. But the years pass, the humiliations accumulate, the promises are broken, and the demand grows. Purna Swaraj, complete independence. Jawaharlal Nehru, a young lawyer from Kashmir, elegant, educated in the West at Harrow and Cambridge, who nonetheless, or perhaps because of it, dedicates himself to the Indian cause. He becomes Gandhi's closest ally, his chosen successor, the man Gandhi sees as the future of India. The British arrest Gandhi again and again. He goes to prison with a smile, with a spinning wheel. He spins every day as a symbol: Indian hands, Indian work, Indian dignity. The Second World War comes. India fights alongside Britain. 2 million Indian soldiers in Burma, in North Africa, in Europe. Gandhi says, "Quit India 1942. Leave India now." He is arrested. Nehru is arrested. Tens of thousands are arrested. But after the war, Britain is exhausted, too exhausted to govern an empire that no longer wants them. In our next chapter, freedom comes, but with a terrible price. Rest now. The story continues. We continue our story. 1947. Britain has decided India will have its freedom. But which India? That is the question that poisons everything. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the leader of the Muslim League, believes Muslims and Hindus cannot live in one state. Muslims need their own country. Pakistan, the land of the pure. Gandhi is against it. He believes in a united India, an India that embraces all religions: Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians. Nehru hesitates, but in the end, to avoid further delay of independence, he agrees. On the 14th of August 1947, Pakistan becomes independent. On the 15th of August 1947, India becomes independent. But the border, drawn in a few weeks by a British official, Cyril Radcliffe, who had never visited India, separates families, villages, fields, temples, and mosques. What follows is the largest forced migration in history. 15 million people flee in both directions. Muslims to Pakistan, Hindus and Sikhs to India. Between 1 million and 2 million people die in massacres in trains in the ditches of Partition. Gandhi fasts in Calcutta to stop the violence. He succeeds. Then he is assassinated on the 30th of January 1948 by a Hindu fanatic who believes Gandhi has betrayed the Hindus. India weeps. In our next chapter, a new country finds its way. Rest now. The story continues. We continue our story. 15th of August 1947, midnight, Delhi. Jawaharlal Nehru speaks to the Indian people in a moment that changes India's history forever. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom. A moment he calls a tryst with destiny. Nehru becomes India's first prime minister, 17 years until his death in 1964. He has a vision, a socialist, secular, democratic India that gives all its citizens equal rights regardless of religion, of caste, of gender. The Constitution of 1950, the longest constitution in the world, guarantees fundamental rights for all, abolishes discrimination on the grounds of caste. An enormous task in a country of 400 million people, 80% illiterate, with 1,000 languages, with ancient social hierarchies, thousands of years old. But India votes for the first time in 1952, the largest election humanity had yet seen. Hundreds of millions of people, many for the first time, holding a ballot paper. India is a democracy, the largest in the world, and remains one. In our next chapter, the neighbor becomes the enemy. Rest now, the story continues. We continue our story. India and Pakistan, two countries, born from one in a single night of violence. They share a language, Hindi and Urdu, So similar they understand each other. So differently written, they seem like separate worlds. They share a history, thousands of years of common past, Mughal emperors and Gandhi, Bollywood songs, sung on both sides, poets revered on both sides. And they share a conflict that never ends. Kashmir, the beautiful valley in the north, claimed by both, over which they fought 3 wars. 1947, 1965, 1971. 1971, Pakistan breaks apart, the East rebels with Indian help. Bangladesh is born, a 3rd state, from the body of Pakistan. 1998, both countries test nuclear weapons within weeks of each other, as a response to the other. The world holds its breath. 2 countries with nuclear weapons, who hate each other, who share a common border. And yet, they live alongside each other, decades without major war, in a peace that is no peace, but also no war. In our next chapter, we look at India today. Rest now. The story continues. We continue our story. India today. Nearly 1.5 billion people. The world's largest democracy, the 5th largest economy, and soon the 3rd. Since 1991, India has opened its economy, dismantled state monopolies, invited foreign investment, and something extraordinary happens. Bangalore, a city in southern India, becomes the Silicon Valley of Asia. Infosys, Wipro, Tata Consultancy, Indian technology companies working for the entire world. The Indian middle class grows fast year after year. Hundreds of millions of people rising out of poverty, buying refrigerators, motorcycles, smartphones, dreams. But India struggles. Caste, officially abolished, in practice still deeply rooted. The Dalits, the former untouchables, discriminated against, harassed, killed in a country that promises equality. Religion, the tensions between Hindus and Muslims that sometimes explode into violence, into pogroms, into a politics that uses these tensions rather than healing them. Narendra Modi, Prime Minister since 2014, a Hindu nationalist who wants to make India great, but who also alarms Muslims and minorities. And poverty, still, despite all the growth, hundreds of millions of people who have not yet benefited. In our next chapter, we look at the culture. Rest now. The story continues. We continue our story. India has given the world not only history, it has given the world a culture that has reached deeper and further than most people realize. Yoga, in every gym in the world today, a practice for body and mind that was born in India. 3,000 years ago, as a spiritual practice, as a path to liberation, not as exercise. Meditation, the stilling of the mind that the Buddha taught that millions of people around the world practice today, in apps, in clinics, in corporate boardrooms. Bollywood, the largest film industry in the world, larger than Hollywood, by number of films, by number of viewers. Songs sung in Hindi that are watched in Moscow and Lagos and Jakarta. The cuisine, curry masala biryani dal, the spices that once drove Europe to the edge of madness, that Columbus sailed for, that Vasco da Gama circumnavigated Africa for, still today, among the most beloved cuisines on earth. The mathematics, zero decimal numbers, algebra, sine and cosine, all from India, passed through Arab scholars to Europe. The language, Sanskrit, the mother of half the languages of Europe, from which German descends, English, Persian, Russian. In our final chapter, we ask what remains. Rest now. The story continues. We have reached the end of our story. India, the land of 1,000 faces, the land of contradictions, the land that has never stopped marveling and arguing, praying and calculating, dancing and thinking. What remains? The numbers, the zero, without which there is no modern mathematics, no computing, no physics, no rockets, no smartphones invented in India 1,500 years ago. The philosophy, Hinduism and Buddhism, two of the deepest spiritual traditions in human history, that ask, what am I? What is reality? How do I live well? How do I free myself from suffering? The democracy, India's greatest experiment, still running, still not finished, that must be reinvented every day in a country so vast and so diverse that no other country in the world could hold it together. The language, Sanskrit, the grandmother of half the languages of Europe. The connection between a German word and a Sanskrit word that you can hear if you listen carefully enough. Father Pita, mother Mata, brother Brata. The same words from the same source, separated 5,000 years ago, and still recognizably related. The food, the spices that drove Europe to the edges of the world. The ships that sent out the world that made smaller, still on every table in the world today. And Gandhi, the idea that you can win without weapons, that dignity is stronger than violence, that truth prevails if you remain faithful to it. Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, Aung San Suu Kyi, all learned from Gandhi, all carried his idea into other countries, other struggles. Tonight we follow this story, from the first cities on the Indus, through Buddha and Ashoka, through the Guptas and the Mughals, through the Taj Mahal and the East India Company, through Gandhi and the Partition, to the modern India, that challenges the world in the 21st century. The oldest living civilization, the youngest great democracy, the land of 1,000 faces that still surprises everyone. Now rest. The story has been told. Sleep well. Sleep well.